Hi Steve, great to meet up with you and begin the work on the 2013 campaign. Things are going really nicely. I mean, as expected, it was a bit of a touch-up session, really, getting you back on track. As all golfers do, tend to creep back to your old habits, albeit to a lesser degree, but you creep back to your old habits when left unattended for too long, and with the weather and the time of year, etc., we've obviously not had as much chance to work on the game as we'd like. So if we take a little look at where we were at the start of the session, first thing we noticed was that the club was rolling behind us again. The back of the left hand accumulator 3 rolling, so loading very early in the piece. Left shoulder not working down for long enough, moving the axis of the shoulders off the golf ball, so you can see they're quite a level pitch to the shoulders at that point, which fits into the other moves. As you do that, your head comes off the wall very early in the piece, and then as a result we end up with quite a flat top of the backswing position. From there we continue to tuck the hips, push up off the ground. Club starts to fall a little bit underneath us, but to prevent that happening excessively, we start to collapse the left wrist and release the golf club. You see there quite a high rate of closure on the way through. And they're all things that we've done in the past and I've no doubt will continue to do after a layoff or when we're playing our worst golf. So the first thing we talked about doing was tidying up P2. If you tidy up P2, a lot of the other stuff falls into place nicely. And the key thought when you're trying to tidy up P2 for yourself is to keep the grooves on the club face pointing at the ball for as long as possible. You can see when you do that, you maintain your inclination to the ground, the head's not drifted off the wall, the pitch of the shoulders is much more at 90 degrees, or is at 90 degrees, to your inclination to the ground. The club hasn't rolled behind us excessively and has stayed square to the arc of the swing. So a lot of good things happening just by keeping the grooves of the club pointing at the ball, or zero rotation of accumulator 3 from P1 to P2. From there, as you work to the top, we don't come off the wall quite as much again, resulting in a completely different top of the backswing position where the arm plane appears to be much steeper. It's actually just a result of the pitch of the shoulders and your ability to maintain your inclination to the ground. So working on tidying up P2 first, then what we started to look at was trying to use your inclination to the ground to assist your ability to deliver the club to the ball consistently, and also to control the rate at which the forward bend is released through the downswing, improving the hip slide during the downswing, and also improving your ability to cut the finish off in the through swing. So here we have you from down the line, maintaining that accumulator 3 position to P2, trying to keep your head on the wall throughout the swing. That's shortening the backswing up a little bit as well, which is good, preventing us from tucking the hips too soon, which is good. Coming into impact, we've now got the hip location just a touch more open than we see on this one. And if the body is rotating and extending and tilting at the correct rate, the club is being delivered to the ball in a much more appropriate manner at P6, which then requires less of a collapsing or a scooping motion through the golf ball. So now that wasn't the best strike in the world, as you can see with the divot, but the movement there was good. You maintain your inclination to the ground rather than coming up off the wall and then dipping back into it. So you can see on this one, you come off the wall and then dip back into it on the way through. When viewed from face on, what we tend to see is even with a better top of the backswing position, we push up off the ground too early, we don't quite get back into flexion, and now we go dipping forward and chasing after it with the upper axis. What we're looking for, remember, is a stable upper axis, maintaining your inclination to the ground, so using that as the key thought. Backswing improves, tightens up a little bit. Not as much of a tendency to push up off the ground too soon, so we get back into flexion. Now what we do now is we continue to slide the hips to offset the extension, and look at the difference in the stability of the axis in the finish. So the axis of the shoulder turn has drifted forward. The axis of the shoulder turn has stayed stable, and you achieve that by maintaining your inclination to the ground. In order to maintain your inclination to the ground during the downswing, or during the through swing in particular from P6 onwards, you have to turn, right tilt, which is your hip slide, and extend at the correct rate. So rather than worrying about how you're doing all these things, concentrate on maintaining your inclination. Hitting shots with a consistent inclination to the ground will condition you to do those three things at the correct rate. The work you sent across that you were doing indoors, although I do sympathise with your wife, I think is great. Continue to work on that along those lines. The way you had your workstation set up was perfect. A lot of shots, Steve, just maintaining your inclination to the ground. The other thing you could work on, as we've done in the past, we discussed about where you could put the shafts. You could also consider at some point spending just 5 minutes a session with a shaft or the canes in that location, and make sure that you don't move past them in the through swing. So a few things to work on there. Tidy up P1 to P2, improve your inclination or your ability to maintain your inclination to the ground throughout the swing. Good luck with it, and look forward to watching your progress during the coming months. Well done.